Venice, 5060. In the marshlands of the Cannaregio district, a new word was born into the global lexicon, the ghetto. When Shakespeare drafted his Venetian drama, he wasn't just writing a play, he was mapping a reality. From the dish of doves to the strict maritime codes of the Serenissima, the details reveal a startling intimacy with the laws of the lagoon. This is episode 3, The Ghetto and the Merchant. The Venetian ghetto was the area of Venice in which Jews were forced to live by the government of the Venetian Republic. The English word ghetto is derived from the Jewish ghetto in Venice. The word ghetto likely comes from the Venetian ghetto, as the area was previously an iron foundry. Jews were required to stay inside the ghetto from sunset to sunrise. The gates were locked from the outside by Christian guards, whose salaries were paid by the Jewish community. Because the Jewish population grew but the physical boundaries of the ghetto were fixed, they built skyscrapers, tenements up to 7 stories high, which were the tallest residential buildings in Venice at the time. The first time we read the name ghetto in The Merchant of Venice is in Act 2, Scene 2, in which we have the fool Lancelot Gobbo asking the way to Master Jew.
Master, young gentleman, I pray you, which is the way to Master Jews?
Turn up on your right hand at the next turning, but at the next turning of all on your left, marry, at the very next turning, turn of no hand, but turn down indirectly to the Jew's house.
The word the famous Jew of Venice is, of course, Shylock, but there are other Jews in the play. There is Shylock's daughter, Jessica, and Tubal. At the time, in the 16th century, no Jews residing in Venice was considered Venetian. They were actually considered foreigners, and they lived in the ghetto thanks to a permission of the Venetian Senate. The Jewish community did not have an inherent right to live in Venice. Their presence was dictated by a legal contract called a condotta, that in English means behavior. These charters usually lasted for 5 to 10 years. When a condotta expired, the Venetian Senate would debate whether to renew it. The Jewish community had to pay massive taxes and loans to the Serenissima to have their charter renewed. They were essentially paying for the privilege of being tolerated. But the Senate was pragmatic. They allowed Jews to stay because they managed the Banco di Pegno, pawn shops, which provided low-interest loans to the city's Christian poor, a service the state needed but didn't want to run itself. Jews were banished in England from the 30th century. They were harassed, chased out of Spain, Portugal, and there is an interesting story that connects Jews with the Florio family. Why? Because John Florio's grandparents were Jews. They were the so-called marranos, so the Jews that were forced to convert to Catholicism. John Florio makes about 20 references to Jewish culture in his works. The Merchant of Venice is based on Sir Giovanni Fiorentino il Pecorone, a sort of collection, much like the Cameron, in which we have this story of the pound of flesh. This collection was published in 1558 in Italian, and the first English translation was published in 1596. Of course, John Florio owned this book in his library. Sir Giovanni Fiorentino was likely a notary or a lawyer from Florence. He wrote Il Pecorone, the Simpleton, around 1378, modeling it after Boccaccio's Decameron. The premise involves a monk and a nun who meet in a convent parlor and tell each other stories to pass the time. The fourth day of the collection contains the tale of Giannetto,
Unlike early versions of the pound of flesh myth, which were often set in a vague or mythical lens, Fiorentino specifically set the action in Venice. He established the city as a place where the law was so absolute that even a merchant's life could be forfeit to a contract. Fiorentino also introduced the Lady of Belmont, a wealthy widow who tests her suitors. In his version, the text is far more adult and darker than Shakespeare's Three Caskets, but the DNA of Portia's character starts here. Florio's library was legendary, and scholars suggest that if Shakespeare didn't read Italian, he had access to the source of Il Pecorone through John Florio. Florio's dictionary, A World of Words, and Queen Anna's New World of Words also provided the specific Italian vocabulary used in the play.
The word gobbo is an interesting word. The first writer to mention the word gobbo is John Florio.
According to John Florio, gobbo means bunch or croup-back, so it means hunchback. In the heart of the Rialto market, there stands a famous statue known as Il Gobbo di Rialto, a stone figure of a crouching man holding up a granite podium from which loaves were read. By naming a character Gobbo, the play anchors itself directly in the physical architecture of the Venetian marketplace.
In Act 3, Scene 4 of The Merchant of Venice, Portia uses an interesting word, traject, the common ferry.
And look what notes and garments he doth give thee. Bring them, I pray thee, with imagined speed unto the traject, to the common ferry which trades to Venice. Waste no time in words, but get thee gone. I shall be there before thee.
The traject carries up to 10 passages, and it's the public transportation of gondolas in Venice, so Shakespeare translates the Italian word traghetto into traject, the common ferry. Now I'll show you an example of a traject, of a traghetto that carries up to 10 passages. There it is. That's the traject that carries up to 10 passengers, cited by Shakespeare. In The Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare also seems to know that in the palace where the Venetian nobles lived, it was essential to know at least 3 languages, Latin, Italian and French. Why she mocks them all? Because they know very little languages.
You know I say nothing to him, for he understands not me nor I him. He hath neither Latin, French, nor Italian, and you will come into the court and swear that I have a poor pennyworth in the English. He is a proper man's picture, but alas, who can converse with a dumb show? How oddly he is suited. I think he bought his doublet in Italy, his round hose in France, his bonnet in Germany, and his behavior everywhere.
So Portia considers the 3 languages to be absolutely essential for any proper man, and this is something that John Florio underlined in his works. In First Fruits, he writes that the first time he came to London, he asked about 500 people in Italian and French where the post dwelled, and he received no answer. He also encouraged English people, especially children, to learn languages. And Shakespeare seems to have the same concern in this scene. English people learn languages. In The Merchant of Venice, Act 1, Scene 3, there is a conversation between Shylock and Bassano.
May I speak with Antonio?
If it please you to dine with us.
Yes, to smell pork, to eat of the habitation which your prophet the Nazarite conjured the devil into. I will buy with you, sell with you, talk with you, walk with you, and so following, but I will not eat with you, drink with you, nor pray with you.
So Shakespeare knew that a Jew would not dine at a table that was not kosher. In the ghetto, the separation was not just about where one lived, but what one consumed.
So Shakespeare knew very well how Jews lived and the rules regarding nutrition, even if at the time when he wrote The Merchant of Venice there were no Jews in England.
Shakespeare was also familiar with the Jewish clothing in Venice. In Act 1, Scene 3, Shylock refers to the gaberdine, the Jewish gaberdine. John Florio explains us that caffettano is a gaberdine or such garment, a long loose gown or cloak with wide sleeves worn by merchants.
When Gobbo is on his way to the ghetto, he brings a dish of doves. This was not an uncommon gift in Italy.
In the play, Shylock's servant, Lancelot Gobbo, redirects a gift of doves intended for his Jewish master to his new Christian master, Bassanio. Doves were a rare middle ground food, a staple delicacy for Venetian Christians. They also met Shylock's strict Jewish dietary laws. By tracing the Florio connection and the architectural echoes of the Gobbo di Rialto, we find a Shakespeare who was a master of the localism. He understood that in Venice, the distance between a Christian table and a Jewish home was measured in more than just steps. It was measured in the food they share and the clothes they were forced to wear. Through the dish of doves and the traghetto ferries, we see a play that isn't just about a pound of flesh, but about the fragile, high-stakes reality of life in the world's first ghetto. This wasn't just theater, it was an anatomy of a city.